The wind howled across the red wasteland, carrying dust, ash, and the smell of old fire. The ground was cracked like broken glass, dry and lifeless. Two figures moved slowly across the rocky surface, one limping, the other barely keeping up. They were not human. Their skin was pale blue, their eyes large and dark, and their clothes torn from long days of escape. Their names were Kira and Selah, alien women from a ruined colony. They had escaped the burning of their home just 2 nights ago. Since then, they had not eaten much, only a few dry roots and drops of stale water. Their boots were worn out, feet bleeding, and every step sent a wave of pain up their legs. But still, they kept walking. There was no turning back behind them. Were the scavenger hunters brutal creatures with metal arms and no mercy? They hunted for fun, not survival, and now Kira and Selah were the prey. "We should rest," Selah said, holding her side. Kira looked around, her eyes scanning the flat land. There. She pointed at a pile of old rusted machinery and abandoned mining outpost. Half buried under the dirt, it looked dead, forgotten. But it might hide them for the night. The sun was almost gone, and the cold of night was already creeping in. They climbed over the broken fence and entered the dark shell of the outpost. The floor groaned under their feet, metal bending with every step. They didn't speak, didn't even breathe loudly. Something about the place felt wrong, but they were too tired to care. In the center of the building, they found a quiet spot covered in dust and bones, but still better than the wasteland outside. Kira sat down, leaning against the wall. Selah dropped beside her, breathing heavy. Then clank the floor gave out from under them, metal hinges snapping like old bones. They both screamed as they fell through the rusted trapdoor. Crash! They landed hard on something cold and sharp. Kira cried out, her leg was caught. Selah reached for her, but her arm was twisted strangely, chains wrapped around their limbs thin, rusted, but still strong enough to hold them. The trap had been set long ago, but it still worked. It was made for beasts. But it had found 2 frightened alien women instead. Blood dripped onto the metal floor. The room smelled like rust and rot. They were trapped in a small cage, deep underground, no way out. Selah tried to pull the chain off her leg, but it wouldn't move. Kira's voice trembled. "Is this how we die?" Selah didn't answer. She looked at her friend, eyes soft, and whispered, "I'm sorry I made you come with me." Kira shook her head. "No, I would have followed you anywhere." For a long time, they sat there in silence. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. They couldn't see the stars, couldn't feel the sky, only the sound of their breath, the drip of blood, and the distant echo of wind above, then footsteps. Heavy, slow, one step at a time. Someone or something was walking outside. Kira held her breath. Selah's eyes widened in fear. It wasn't the light clicking of scavenger boots. It wasn't the sharp buzz of drones. This sound was different. Heavy boots, walking with purpose. They heard the dirt shift. Then the sound of something large being moved. A cover. Maybe... door. Kira squeezed Selah's hand. "If it's them, we don't scream," she said quietly. "If it's them, we don't beg," Selah replied. But then they heard a voice, not sharp or cruel like the scavengers, not high-pitched like drones, a deep voice, calm, Rafa, human voice. "Anyone down there?" it said. Both women froze. Kira couldn't believe her ears. A human they had heard stories but never seen one. Humans were strong, dangerous, unpredictable, but also known for helping. "Sometimes help us," Kira whispered, her voice dry. She wasn't even sure he could hear. The man above was silent. Then more noise, metal scraping, a hatch unlocking, light poured into the trap. Blinding their tired eyes, a face appeared shadowed, scarred, but clearly human. He looked at them, at the blood, the chains. The fear in their eyes. He said nothing. Only pulled off his jacket and tossed it down to them. And then, without a word, he started climbing down. He climbed down the ladder slowly. His boots made heavy thuds on the rusted metal. Kira and Sayla stayed silent, unsure if they should trust him or prepare to die. The man's face was partly hidden by the shadows of the low light. But when he stepped closer, they saw him clearly. His face was rough, dust-covered, and marked by a long scar running down his right cheek. One eye was gray, the other had a strange flicker. Like it had seen too much, he didn't speak. Instead, he kneeled beside Kira, looked at the bloody chain on her ankle, and reached into a small pouch at his belt. Kira flinched, expecting pain, but he pulled out a tool small. Old, but sharp hand carefully started to cut through the chain. The sound of scraping metal echoed around the chamber. Kira winced as the metal cracked, but the pain was less than she feared. The man moved to Sayla next, who looked at him with narrowed eyes. He paused for a second, then gave her a small nod like he was saying, "I mean no harm." She didn't speak, but she let him work. Within minutes, both chains were broken and the women were free, but they couldn't walk easily. Their legs were weak, their wounds fresh, and their energy nearly gone. The man stood up, turned his back to them, and walked toward the ladder. Sayla grabbed Kira's hand, whispering, "Is he leaving us?" But then he stopped, turned, and spoke for the first time. "Follow me," he said in a rough voice, not a request, not a command. Just a short sentence full of quiet weight. He climbed out first, the ladder creaking under his weight. Kira helped Sayla up, both of them trembling as they pulled themselves toward the surface. When they reached the top, the sun was gone. Night had taken over, and the stars blinked faintly through the dust clouds. The wasteland was silent, but dangerous. Strange shapes moved in the distance, and something howled far away. The man looked at them again, then walked ahead. He didn't ask questions, didn't explain, just kept walking like he knew where safety was. Kira and Sayla limped behind him, every step painful, but they had no other choice. Something about him, his calmness, his silence felt strange. He didn't act like the other hunters or survivors they had seen before. He didn't stare at them like they were prey. He didn't ask for trade, didn't look at their bodies like others had. He just led the way, quietly, like a ghost walking through memory after a long walk. They reached a small ridge and climbed down into a narrow path between rocks. At the end of it was a hidden entrance barely visible unless someone knew it was there. Inside was a cave, warm with firelight, flickering softly on the walls. The smell of cooked food hit them suddenly strong, spicy, and real. The man dropped his backpack near the fire, sat down, and tossed them a canteen drink. He said, Sayla caught it, opened it carefully, and took a sip. Her hands shook, but the water was clean. She passed it to Kira, who drank with both hands, tears filling her eyes. It was the first clean water they had tasted in days. Then the man handed them small meat pieces wrapped in warm root bread. They ate slowly at first, unsure if it was a trap, but hunger quickly overtook fear. They didn't speak until their bellies were half full. Then Kira looked up, eyes searching his face. "Why did you help us?" she asked softly. The man stared into the fire for a long moment. Then he spoke. "You looked like someone I lost," he said. That was all. Nothing more. Sayla tilted her head. Watching him, she noticed the scar again, and the way his left hand never opened fully. He was a fighter, a survivor, maybe even a killer. But tonight he had given them warmth, food, water, and safety outside. The cold wind whistled through the canyon walls. Inside, the fire crackled gently. Kira leaned back against the cave wall, her body slowly relaxing for the first time in days. She watched the man sharpen a blade with quiet focus. Even now, he prepared for danger, Sayla curled beside her, whispering in their native tongue. "We live." For now, Kira nodded, touching her own ankle where the chain had been. She looked at the human again, this silent man with sad eyes and a fighter's hands. Maybe he was more than just a wanderer. Maybe he was their only chance. As sleep pulled at her, Kira whispered to the fire, "Thank you." And though the man never looked up, a tiny nod answered her in the dark wasteland, where hope had long died. One human, scarred, quiet, and alone, had changed everything. The fire was nearly out. A few glowing embers pulsed in the dark cave like a weak heartbeat. The air had grown cold, and outside, the wind had stopped. Silence fell over the desert, tan, eerie. Unnatural silence. Dax sat near the entrance, his back straight, his weapon resting on his knees. He wasn't sleeping. He hadn't slept at all since they reached the cave. His one good eye watched the shadows outside with quiet alertness. Kira stirred in her sleep, whispering something in her native tongue beside her. Sayla shivered and rolled onto her side, her wounded arm tucked close. They looked peaceful for now, but their faces still carried the tension of those who had run too long. Suddenly, a faint buzzing. Dax's head turned sharply. He moved to the edge of the cave and pulled the netting aside slightly. There it was, scout drone, floating just above the rocks. Blinking red lights scanning the area. He cursed under his breath and ducked back inside. The drone hadn't seen them yet, but it was close. Too close. Dax shook Kira gently. Her eyes opened, wide and alert. Trained by fear to wake fast. "Drone," he whispered. "Don't speak. Don't move." She nodded quickly and nudged Sayla, who also woke at once. The three of them crouched near the back of the cave. Dax killed the last of the embers with sand and covered the fire pit. Darkness swallowed the cave. The buzz grew louder, then paused. A shadow passed over the entrance. The drone hovered outside, scanning, blinking, then it moved on. They stayed still for a long time. No one breathed loudly. No one dared whisper. Only after several minutes did Dax finally relax, just a little. "They're sweeping the area," he said. Kira's voice was barely above a breath. "There. Looking for us, more will come," Sayla added. "They'll follow the heat trail, or the scent of blood." Dax nodded. "I know," he said. "We won't stay here much longer." He looked at the two of them, both still exhausted. Still healing, but there was no choice. The scavenger machines would find the cave by morning. And when they did, it wouldn't be with questions. It would be with fire. He packed his gear. "Quickly, eat something. Drink," he said, handing them the last of his dry rations. "We move in 1 hour." Kira looked at the food, then back at him. "Where will we go?" "There's a city ruin nearby," Dax replied. "Empty, dead. But there's an old comms tower. If it still works, I can send a signal." "To who?" Sayla asked, doubt in her voice. Dax stood up, checking his weapon. "To anyone who's still listening," he said. "Or no one, but it's better than waiting here to die." The hour passed quickly. They stepped out into the night, the wind. Having returned with cold teeth, the sky above was wide, full of strange stars, and 2 shattered moons hung low. Kira walked carefully, her legs still sore but stronger. Sayla leaned on a walking stick made from a broken metal pipe. Dax walked ahead of them, silent as always. Each step forward took them deeper into the unknown as they moved across the rocks. Kira kept looking over her shoulder. She didn't know what scared her more, what was behind them, or what might be waiting ahead. Then came the sound, metal feet, marching in rhythm. They weren't alone. Dax raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. He crouched and scanned the dark hills, eyes narrowing. And then they saw them, shadows with red eyes. Moving in a long line, scavenger hunters, machines built from old war parts. Some looked like animals, others like armored giants, all of them deadly. They're between us and the city. Sayla said in a low voice. "They'll cut us down." Dax didn't reply. He studied the rocks, the angles, the wind direction. Then he spoke, calm and clear. "We go around through the old valley. No one goes through the valley." Kira whispered, "There are worse things there than drones." The fire crackled softly inside the cave. The flames gave off a warm orange glow that danced across the stone walls. Kira sat close to the heat, her hands outstretched, letting the warmth touch her blue skin. Her body still ached, but the pain felt distant now. Like a bad memory that hadn't faded yet, Sayla rested against the wall with her head back, her eyes half closed. She held her injured arm carefully across her chest, wrapped in a torn cloth soaked in herbs and some kind of powder the human had given her. It stung at first, but then the pain dulled. She hadn't said much since they arrived. Neither had Kira. The silence between them was not cold, was peace. Finally, after too many days of fear, the human sat a few feet away, legs crossed, slowly sharpening a long knife with slow, steady strokes. His scar caught the firelight, making his face look even harder than before, but his hands moved gently, without hurry or threat. He hadn't asked their names, hadn't told his own. He just worked, focused. Like this was the only thing that mattered. Kira finally spoke, her voice low and careful. "You saved us." The man didn't look up. "I didn't plan to," he said, his voice like gravel rubbed between fingers. "But I saw you and couldn't leave." Sayla glanced at him, unsure whether to trust him still. "Humans don't usually help our kind," she said. The man looked at her this time, meeting her gaze for a brief moment. "I'm not most humans," he replied, then went back to sharpening the blade. Kira looked down at the bread in her hand. It was dry now, but still food. She had eaten half earlier, but saved the rest for Sayla in case she grew hungry again. They didn't have much, but she had learned to share what little they had. "Do you have a name?" she asked. The man paused, then nodded slowly. "Dax," he said. "Just Dax." Kira repeated it softly. Dax. It was a strong name, short and rough. Like him, outside the cave, the wind howled, sand whipping through the night like claws across stone. The sound made Sayla flinch. She pulled her legs close and stared into the fire. "They're still looking for us," she whispered. "Scavenger packs don't stop until they see your bones." Dax finally stood and walked to the cave entrance. He crouched near a pile of broken rocks, pulling a camo net across the cave mouth from the outside. It looked like nothing but a wall of stone and sand inside. The firelight dimmed slightly, but still glowed enough to keep them warm. "No one will find us here," Dax said. "This place was mine before the war, and no one remembers it but me." Kira frowned. "You fought in the war." Dax didn't answer, but the way he gripped his knife tighter said yes. The silence returned, thick like smoke, the kind that carried pain, old and deep. Sayla looked down at her bandaged arm. "Why did they attack our colony?" she asked softly. Dax sat down again, this time slower, because broken people like breaking others. He said, "That's the only reason I've found that ever makes sense." Kira blinked, surprised at the truth in his words. She looked at Sayla, then back at Dax. "Do you have anyone left?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then he tossed a small log into the fire and stared at the flames. "My sister," he said. "She died in a place like this, caught in a trap. Just like you, I couldn't save her." Sayla's eyes softened. Kira slowly leaned closer, resting her head against her knees. The fire made her feel tired now, from weakness, but from safety, something she hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm sorry," Kira whispered. Dax just nodded. No. More words were needed. Later that night, when the fire burned low and only glowing embers remained, the three of them sat in silence. Sayla had fallen asleep first, her breathing soft and slow. Kira stayed awake a little longer, watching Dax. He was still sharpening the knife. Though it no longer needed sharpening, she realized it wasn't about the blade. It was about keeping the hands busy when the heart was full of ghosts. Eventually, she lay down beside Sayla before closing her eyes. She whispered, "Thank you, Dax." He looked at her and gave a quiet nod, then went back to the motion. The scraping sound soft, like a lullaby for the lost, and in that small cave. Under the stars, three strangers shared warmth, pain, and something none of them had expected: hope. Dax looked back at her. "I've been through it twice and lived," he said. "Can you trust me?" Sayla and Kira looked at each other, then nodded slowly. They followed Dax as he turned toward the dark valley where the wind carried strange sounds. Like whispers and growls, it was a place full of broken memories and dead machines, but it was the only path left as they moved down into the shadowed pass. Kira reached for Dax's sleeve. "Why are you helping us?" she asked again. He stopped walking for a moment, then he said, without turning, "Because someone once helped me." The answer was simple, but it wrapped around her like warmth for a brief second. She felt less alone. They disappeared into the black of the valley. Three figures, one human, two alien, running from death, chasing a sliver of hope, and behind them, the red eyes followed. The sun rose behind a thick blanket of ash-colored clouds. The light was weak, more gray than gold, and it didn't warm the skin. Dax stood at the edge of the valley with Kira and Sayla, staring out at what remained of old Juro City. Once, it had been a thriving trade outpost with towers of glass and metal. Now, it was nothing but a skeleton, broken buildings, tilted walkways, fallen signs, and silence. A place left behind by time. A place where even scavengers feared to stay too long. Dax pointed toward a tall, rusted structure in the distance. "There," he said. "That tower had a communication relay if the core still works." "I can send a signal." Kira squinted, barely able to see it through the dust. "Will someone hear us?" Dax didn't answer right away. "I don't know," he said finally. "But if no one hears us, we still have nowhere else to go." They stepped into the dead city, moving carefully over crumbling streets. Their feet echoed with soft crunches of debris and broken glass. Every corner felt dangerous. Every shadow held a shape that might move. Old war machines sat in the streets, half covered by rubble. Some still had glowing eyes but didn't move. Dead AI with no commands. Twisted metal arms stretched from the ground like claws. Sayla whispered, "This place feels cursed." They passed an overturned vehicle with alien bones still inside. Its screen flashed a repeating message in a forgotten language. Kira paused to look, then quickly turned away. She had seen too much death already. Dax led them through a collapsed market square, where wind blew torn banners against cracked stone. He knew this path. He had walked it years ago, during a mission he never talked about. He hated being back here. But now he was no longer alone. They reached an alley, blocked by fallen walls. Dax knelt and moved aside a metal panel, revealing a small passage underneath. "In here," he said. Crawling in first, Kira followed, dragging Sayla gently through. On the other side, they reached a side stair, well old, rusty, but still holding its shape. Dax looked up, counting floors. 8 levels up, he said. "Then we're at the relay." The climb was slow. Sayla's injured arm made it harder, and Kira had to support her step by step. Dax moved ahead, always checking the corners first. On the 6th floor, they stopped to rest from a cracked window. Kira could see the whole city, miles of ruins, smoke trails in the far sky, and dots of movement. She shivered. "Something's coming," she whispered. Dax joined her at the window and pulled out a tiny scope. He adjusted it, frowned, and then gave a sharp nod. "Patrol bots," he said. "Fast ones tracking. How long before they get here?" Sayla asked, her voice tight. Less than an hour. Dax replied, we have to move now. They climbed the last 2 levels quickly, ignoring the pain. The door to the relay room was rusted shut, but Dax slammed it with his shoulder until it opened. Inside, everything was covered in dust and webs, but the console, though old still, had power. Dax moved fast, connecting wires, pulling out tools, tapping on a faded screen. Kira and Sayla stood by the door, keeping watch. Every tick of time felt heavy. Every second might be their last. Suddenly, the screen flickered. A green light blinked. Twice, then held steady. Dax's voice was steady, but tense. Signals live. Broadcasting distress on all open bands. Is anyone answering? Kira asked. He shook his head. Not yet. Then came the sound metal feet. On stairs, they were coming. Fast, loud, close. Dax stood, grabbed his weapon, and threw a second blaster to Kira. You ever shoot one of these? Kira caught it. With wide eyes, no. Then point and pull the trigger when something metal comes through that door. He said. Sayla crouched behind the console, clutching a pipe, her jaw tight with fear and anger. The first bot burst through the door sleek. Red-eyed, armed with claws and blasters, Dax shot twice. The first hit the wall, the second fried its core. Kira screamed, but then pulled the trigger, missing the bot but scaring it long enough for Dax to land another shot. More bots rushed in. The room became a blur of sparks, screams, and smoke. Sayla leaped from behind and slammed one with her pipe. Breaking its eye lens, Dax reloaded, took a deep breath, and yelled, "Hold them here. We need the signal to finish." Outside, the city echoed with the sounds of battle, but inside that dusty tower, 3 broken souls stood shoulder to shoulder. Not as prey anymore, but as fighters, and far above, in the orbit of a forgotten planet. A light blinked on an old human beacon receiver. The signal had been heard. The tower shook as more patrol bots climbed the stairs. Their metal claws scraped against the concrete. Their red eyes glowing like fire in the smoke. Kira's hands trembled around the blaster. Sayla stood at her side, breathing fast but steady. Her pipe raised and ready. Dax reloaded his rifle with fast, trained movements. The console beeped again. The signal was still transmitting, but the light blinked faster now. Dax glanced at the screen. "Almost there," he said. Just a few more seconds, the door exploded open. 2 more bots rushed in. One jumped at Sayla. The other went for Kira. Dax moved without thinking. He tackled the bot that aimed for Kira, slamming it into the wall. The machine's claws tore into his jacket, scraping against his armor plate. Kira fired, missed, then fired again. This time, the blast hit the bot in its chest, sending sparks flying. It screeched and fell. Dax rolled away, blood on his shoulder, but still moving. Sayla screamed and swung her pipe hard. The other bot tried to grab her, but she hit it again and again until its red eyes flickered out. The room was filled with smoke, heat, and the sharp smell of metal. Then silence. For a moment, all 3 of them just stood there, breathing hard, weapons raised, waiting for more, but no more came. Only the soft hum of the console and the wind outside. Dax stumbled back to the console, holding his bleeding shoulder. He checked the screen. The signal had been sent. A response code blinked faintly on the side. "Someone heard us," he whispered. Kira stared at him, eyes wide. "You're hurt," she said, rushing to his side. Dax grunted and waved her off. "Not bad," he lied, though his shoulder was soaked in blood. Sayla limped toward the window and peeked out. A ship, far in the distance, was coming, its lights cutting through the dusty air like twin suns. She gasped. "Look," she whispered. "They're coming." Dax followed her gaze. It was a human dropship, old model, but fast and armed. Kira smiled for the first time in days. "We're saved," but the smile didn't last long. From below, A new sound rose, the roar of engines, heavier, darker. Not a rescue ship. Dax's face went cold. They're sending a tank bot, he said. It'll destroy this tower to get to us. He turned to them quickly. Go, get to the roof, he said. Wave the rescue ship in. Kira grabbed his hand. What about you? I'll hold this floor, Dax said. If that bot makes it up here, you won't stand a chance. Sayla stepped forward. We won't leave you, she said, voice shaking but strong. Dax gave her a tired smile. You don't have to. Just get help, without another word. He pushed open the back stair door and aimed his rifle down. Kira and Sayla climbed toward the roof, carrying the beacon light with them. Behind them, they could hear Dax firing again, loud, sharp shots that echoed through the tower. Then a deep metal growl. The tank bot had arrived. On the roof, wind blew wild across the cracked landing pad. Kira lit the beacon and waved it high above her head. The rescue ship saw them and began to descend. Guns spinning, engines roaring. Suddenly, the floor below shook hard. Flames burst from the stairwell. Sayla screamed, Dax. They turned toward the stairs. Smoke rose fast. Then a figure limped out. Coughing hard, clothes torn. It was Dax. His face was burned, shoulder badly injured, but he was alive. He collapsed on the roof just as the ship landed. Kira and Sayla rushed to his side, lifting him between them. The ramp lowered. Human soldiers stepped out with weapons ready. One of them saw Dax and shouted, Commander Dax. We thought you were dead. Kira looked at the soldier, confused. Commander? She asked. The soldier nodded. He was a legend, saved an entire colony, vanished years ago. Dax tried to speak, but coughed. Kira held his hand. You didn't. Tell us, she whispered. Dax gave a weak smile. You didn't ask. The soldiers helped them inside the ship. Medical bots swarmed around Dax. Sayla and Kira sat beside him, holding on to him tightly. For the first time in forever, they felt safe. As the ship rose into the sky, below them, the city faded into smoke and rubble. The tower collapsed behind them, but it didn't matter anymore. They had escaped, they had survived, and the human who fought for them was still by their side. The hum of the rescue ship filled the air, soft and steady. It floated through the stars like a metal bird with heavy wings. Inside, the lights were calm, the walls clean, and the seats warm. It was the first time Kira and Sayla had been in anything that didn't smell like rust or fear. Dax lay on a med bed, eyes closed, bandages wrapped around his chest and shoulder. A slow beep marked his heartbeat. Medical bots moved around him, checking vitals, repairing torn skin, sealing wounds with soft blue light. Kira sat at his side, holding his hand gently. His fingers twitched now and then, as if fighting some battle in his dreams. Sayla sat nearby, legs pulled to her chest. Staring out the window at the stars beyond, he saved us, Kira whispered, over and over again. Sayla nodded, her eyes glossy but firm. I thought humans were cruel, she said. I thought they only took what they wanted. Kira looked down at Dax, but he didn't want anything. She said, he gave without asking. A soft hiss sounded, and the ship's commander entered the room. She was tall, dark-skinned, with sharp eyes and silver armor. Her name badge read Captain Nira. You're the ones Dax called in for, she said, voice calm but respectful. We received the signal and came as fast as we could. Is he going to live? Kira asked, standing quickly. Captain Nira looked at the medical screen. He's strong, she said. His body's broken, but not his will. She paused, then stepped closer to the girls. Do you know who he really is? Sayla shook her head. He said his name was Dax. The captain smiled faintly. He was more than that. He was a commander during the border wars. Rescued colonies, sabotaged enemy lines, vanished after losing his sister in a mission gone wrong. He walked away from everything until he sent that signal. Kira looked at Dax, understanding now why he had been so quiet, so watchful. He had already lived through too much. He had already lost too much when the captain left. Sayla leaned close and whispered, "We're not leaving him." "No," Kira agreed. "We're staying." Hours passed. The stars drifted by. The ship cruised through safe space, heading toward a distant medical station. That night, while everything was quiet, Dax stirred. His eyes blinked open slowly. Dry and tired. Kira gasped and leaned closer. "You're awake," she whispered, smiling through tears. He tried to speak, but coughed. Sayla brought him water and helped him drink. After a moment, he looked at both of them, confused. "You?" "Didn't leave," he said softly. Kira laughed gently. "You saved our lives," she said. "We're not going anywhere." Sayla nodded. "Where you go, we go." Dax looked away, his throat tight. "I'm just a broken soldier," he said. "I have nothing left." Kira touched his face gently. "No," she said. "You have us now." There was silence between them, full of emotion too heavy for words. Then Kira leaned close, her voice barely a breath. "Dax," she whispered. "Will you stay with us?" His eyes softened. "No more caves." He murmured. Kira smiled. "No more traps." Sayla laughed softly. "No more running." Dax looked at both of them. He saw pain in their eyes, yes, but also strength, warmth, and something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. They didn't care about his past. They didn't want medals or stories. They just wanted him, the man who stayed, the man who fought, the man who bled for them. As the stars passed outside the window, Dax closed his eyes again, not from pain, but peace. Later, when they landed at the medical station, the crew offered the girls new homes, safety, food, clothes, but Kira shook her head. "We're going where Dax goes," Sayla added. "He's our home now." The humans didn't argue. They only nodded, watching as something rare unfolded before their eyes. 3 lives, once broken, now bound together by courage, loss, and love. Weeks later, the small farming world under a blue sun, a quiet cabin sat near a river. Inside, laughter echoed softly. Kira cooked while Sayla painted the window frame, and Dax, still healing but stronger every day, sat outside, watching the sky. He didn't wear his old uniform anymore. He didn't carry his weapons. But he still watched the horizon, just in case, and when night came, would sit with the 2 alien women who had once whispered goodbye in the dark. Now, they whispered dreams. They whispered plans. And sometimes, when the stars were just right, Dax would close his eyes and smile. Because he had found something the war could never give him, a reason to live again.